Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today for this guest expert webinar. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director based in just south of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm the fractional CMO for Extranet User Manager, and we're grateful to have a fellow Office Apps and Services MVP, Asif Ramani, joining us today. Asif, how's it going?
Going well.
Well, I'll just quick intros and kick things off here. The webinar, getting the best use out of all Office 365 applications, because adoption and engagement are critical. So this is a great topic. Asif, just about him really quick, if you're unfamiliar with him, as I mentioned, he's a fellow MVP. He's also the founder and CEO of Visual SP, which provides an interactive guidance system to support end users in context of their own environment. So it's a really powerful software solution, as well as he's a major content creator that's out there. So a lot of tweets, a lot of blog posts, a lot of video content, and a lot, of course, around video content you're doing more and more these days. And for those that are, and before I hand this over to Asif to finish the introduction, if you're not familiar with Extranet User Manager, you can visit us at extranetusermanager.com, or easier is eum.co. And Extranet User Manager is an application that provides a robust set of admin and end user features to enable collaboration with external users. So if you are building an extranet and looking to automate that process, then EUM builds on top of what Office 365 and SharePoint and even Azure AD provide, and provide some very powerful tools. So definitely check that out at eum.co. And with that, and the rest of the hour, I'll hand over to Asif and let you take it from there. And I'll field any questions that come up from the audience.
Sounds good. I'm showing the extranetusermanager.com website here. As Christian was talking about, thankful to have Extranet User Manager team and Christian have me here, invited me to do this webinar. And I hope those of you who are online get something out of it. So let me begin over here. We are recording this, by the way. I believe Christian and the team are going to make this available.
We are. It should be, I think we'll have the recording up, you know how processing video, how that takes, but this afternoon or by tomorrow for sure. And we'll also have a blog summary with links to all of Asif's slides.
Yeah, wonderful. Those are the usual questions that come up, right? Can I have the recording? Can I have the slide deck? Absolutely, we'll make that available to you guys. With that, let me go ahead and show my first slide over here. Getting the best use out of all Office 365 applications. As Christian mentioned, my name is Asif Ramani. I'm from Chicago, where it's very mild these days. Really surprising for the time of the year. I have lots and lots of slides here, but I don't just rely on the slides. I try to show the environment and show the actual look and feel of what you should be seeing and what you should be using. So some of the how-to and some of the visuals you'll get from the environment that I'll show, which I just had up before. And then some of the why-to is going to be coming out from the slides. For example, one of the things that I talk about a little bit later is Teams versus Yammer, one of those things that everybody wants to talk about. Which one should I use? When should I use it? So don't worry, we'll be talking about that, as well as everything else within Office 365 as well.
It's awesome. Which one should we use?
You'll have to wait for that answer.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to dive into it because, of course, there is a lot of content. So starting with this is a pretty old version of how Office.com or just the Office 365 homepage used to look like, right? But even if right now you look at it, which I'll show in a minute, the Office Start page is not too much different. You still have lots of different apps just scattered all over. And when a user comes in for the first time, they're confused as to what am I looking at? What should I be looking at? What should I be ignoring? Should I be using everything or not? So what I do in this first set of slides is try to make things a little bit clear for you guys. So I'm gonna actually do some magic here, move some stuff around. Let's move the top bar. I'll move the mail, tasks, people, calendar, and call this group the Outlook group. Yeah. Second, OneNote, Excel, Word, OneDrive, PowerPoint, and the good old, or good new, I should say, Sway, and To Do. And that group, I call it the Office group of applications. You got Power BI by itself, which I'll talk about at the end, more of a business intelligence of surfacing your data, visualizing in a nice manner, right? Then on the right here, I'm going to move SharePoint, Groups, Yammer, Planner, Microsoft Teams, and then we'll call this group Collaboration. A few more. I'll take security and compliance, move that onto the left over here, and security and compliance sits by itself. That's obviously where you manage and configure the security and compliance for your tenant. You got admin, I'll put it to the bottom left, administration of the whole thing. We'll talk about that just briefly as well. Then I'll take Power Apps, Flow, and Forms, and this is going to be the Workflows and Forms group. Then you have Store. Store is one of the only things, maybe the only thing that I will not be talking about in this presentation. So let me just quickly talk about it right now. Store obviously is where you go to get additional apps for your tenant, right? My advice here would be that you go and do it for your tenant and make it available internally for people instead of having them go to the store and getting it themselves. Because obviously, if you do that, then it's an open ballgame. They can just get any app. Not the best practice, not good for governance. Just my opinion. Delve, that also goes by itself. So Delve is where you surface information to people. We will talk about that a little bit later. And then you got Stream and Video, and that becomes the video portal. Now, video is going to go away eventually. Actually, I think it did more or less is gone in most of the tenants now, so I'll maybe cross that off over here as well. Stream is the main video portal. Video used to be, now it's Stream. And I'll leave this up for just a second. This is how at least I think about things. So how do I group things to make it simple for me, simple for people that I'm talking to? Simplicity is super important when it comes to Office 365 because there's just a lot of applications you can use. All of them good ones, but not everything you have to use all the time. It's good to know when to use what. Keep that in mind as we go through this application. A quick introduction of who I am, as Christian was mentioning before. This is me in a nutshell. Been an author, a trainer, a speaker, and a consultant, and all things in between. This is my email address at the bottom left over here. If you want to get in contact with me, you're welcome to do so. I love getting emails, no problem at all with that. And the company that Christian was also talking about is Visual SP that I founded and I run. And just to give you a quick preview, when I'm going from application to application to application within this presentation that I'll be showing you, if you see on the bottom right, you'll always see this Need Help tab. And that Need Help tab is the Visual SP tab. It's always there for people. When they click on it, it gives them context-sensitive help as they need it in terms of videos, articles, and that kind of stuff. That's what Visual SP does. There's, of course, a whole lot more to it. I'm simplifying it. There's walkthroughs and things like that as well, like that. But that's what Visual SP is in a nutshell, giving you context-sensitive information. And if you want to get a copy, a free copy actually of Visual SP, you could do a search for Visual SP plugin, go to the first link, just download it in your browser to get going, and you'll see exactly what I just showed you right now. That is a free copy of Visual SP. Okay. Coming back here to the presentation. So big question, should we be using all Office 365 applications? You know, usually if I was in a room with all of you folks and just looking in your eyes, I would love to understand what you think. I haven't had anybody so far tell me that, yes, we should be using all of them every day, personally. And if you are one of the exceptions who you think if you should be, I would love to hear from you and why. My agenda here, as I was saying before, I'm going to be talking about all the applications, but I'll doing this kind of in the context of a fictional corporation called Contoso Corporation, which all of you have heard of. We'll talk about some of the use cases of what a company like that goes through. We'll definitely show you some things in a live environment as well, and then lessons learned from that company and other companies. Obviously, I'm talking about a fictional corporation, Contoso, but many of the lessons that I'll be talking about are not fictional in nature. I've seen it, I've done it, talked to people, or been in the actual environment to do so. So here's a quick company profile to keep in mind. Contoso Corporation, they do change management consulting, and the employee count is 150. So it's a smallish type of company. Okay. All right. First thing, their requirements. Always, in my opinion, start with requirements as to what you want to accomplish instead of just jumping in to doing everything. So their requirements, just to spend a minute on this, is we want communications, basically email. Oops, I think I went too quickly over here, sorry. Come back here. Yeah, so we want email and chat over here, documents, regular Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that kind of stuff, and we will be able to manage all those things, storing it, easy sharing and things like that. Need an internal company website, an intranet. Since they're in consulting, they also need a consulting tracker application, so they need that as well. And they need project tasks tracking. So they don't have project online, they don't have project server, but they just need easy project tracking. These are their main requirements. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide, which is what they chose to actually get in Office 365. Now, as you know, in Office 365, there's many different versions of it. E1 is the lowest enterprise version, which is $8 per user per month. They decided to go with that, and you don't get any desktop applications with that. But the beauty of this one, it is much, much cheaper than the next version, which is $20 per user per month for the E3, if I remember correctly. So that's what they chose. I'm not saying, of course, that's the best choice, but that is a choice if you want to just go with the browser version. So then their deployment journey begins. First thing, Admin Center. If you're dealing with Office 365, you're gonna have to deal with the Admin Center first. But that's for obviously Office 365 tenant admins, which I'm assuming some of you are not. I'm going to go through this thing quickly and then move on to more user-specific applications, because I'm sure that's what you want to understand regarding Planner and Teams and Office Online and everything else in between. So within admin, you manage billing, set up users, attach your domain. So for example, visualsp.com or extranetUserManager.com, those kind of domains, you have to set it up within the admin center, right? Track usage by users, and then also activate, deactivate services as you're ready for them, like analytics, like Microsoft Teams, things like that. So that's what you do in a nutshell within the admin center. Great. And by the way, as I'm talking about different apps, if you're wondering which app is he talking about, always look at the top right over here. I have the tile for that app right there. All right. Next, Security and Compliance Center. Now, security and compliance, as it says, you manage your security and compliance over there. So the default protections are already set up over there. Some examples are auditing data being accessed by your users, notifications when someone else gets added as a tenant admin, you'll definitely want to know if that happens. And then also things like when sensitive information like credit card, social security number, or that kind of stuff is leaving from the company, from your tenant, you automatically get notified about that, which is really cool to have that stuff. So these things are already set up. You don't have to do anything, but I would definitely highly advise go into it and set up things that you do need in addition to that. Contoso is specifically in this case a smallish company. They didn't really need anything else, so they just let it be like that, and then they move forward. Now, let's talk about the focused, user application, right? Within user application, the easiest one to talk about is the to-do application. The to-do application used to be Wunderlist. To be honest, Wunderlist was a company, wonderful company. Microsoft bought that company, I believe, a few years back now, June of something. Anyway, they took it in, made it into Microsoft To-Do. Now the Outlook tasks is gone completely, replaced by To-Do. I use To-Do all the time personally as well on my laptop and my phone. It's a great application. Now, people who are coming from Outlook tasks to To-Do over here, the easy migration for them, because when you open up To-Do, you see all of your Outlook tasks already there. It's the same data source in the back end. So it was easy for me and for others to switch from that to this one. That's all about To-Do over here. There's an app called a People app. And people still wonder, no pun intended, why do you go to the People app? What's the point of the People app? I want to show you a few scenarios, actually. I find this super helpful to go to the People app. This is what it looks like in a nutshell, right? You go there, you see your contacts, you see your lists, but you also see your groups. Okay, so if you go there and you have Office 365 groups, which we'll be talking about a little bit more later, you can go here and you can manage those groups right there. Managing groups, seeing your contacts, seeing if they're online, connecting with them, looking at their properties as to which department they're in, what's their phone number. There's a lot of people-centric data just like that, in the People app. So it's a very people-centric view, right? You manage group permissions, group memberships right there. Discover and connect with coworkers right there as well. As I was saying, I'm not going to just show you slides, so I'll move back and forth a little bit. This is the People app. Right? This is a sample tenant over here, a demo tenant, and in there's a People app right here. You can see your contacts, your contact lists. I have none over here in this case, but lots of different contacts over here. And then, like I said, primarily what I come in here for is managing my groups. So you go in here, you see which groups you're the owner of, and you can easily invite others. You can edit the group memberships of that right there. Makes it much, much easier to just go in one place to see all the people-centric, as I was saying before, people-centric data and be able to manage that right there. All right. Coming back to the slide over here, next semi-easy thing to talk about is the Office Online applications. Obviously, there's a fact that, actually, I can't remember the exact percentage, so I won't really make something up, but super large majority of the people in this world are using word processing and Excel, that kind of stuff from Microsoft, right? So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they are here to stay. They've been here for a long time. I remember I used to use WordPerfect a long time ago before, and then jumped to Word and have never looked back since then. That was decades ago, I feel. But anyway, in this particular case, Contoso is going into the direction of using Word, Excel, and PowerPoint online version. The online version is not in complete parity yet with the offline, the desktop version. Desktop version is still more powerful. Having said that, more and more things are coming up all the time where Word is getting more powerful. I believe recently we heard that what was that? I'm trying to remember exactly the reviews and tracking, edit tracking, that kind of stuff. All that stuff came to Word. I believe some other features came to Excel as well that I can't recall at this point, but a lot of good stuff is coming to the online version of these apps. Just to give you a quick perspective, if you've not been into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, this is what it looks like. This is Excel. And honestly, from what I've seen the first day of when Excel Online was released a long time ago, to now, it has come a long way, and it's definitely going to go a long way. Eventually, you will not need the desktop applications. That's not the day yet, but it's going to happen. It will happen. Wish I could tell you the roadmap of when it's going to happen, but it will happen. Mark my words.
Hey, Asif, what I would add for that too, and one of the reasons what's driving a lot of that is like the co-editing, the collaborative building of this content. And so that's why you see some of these shared experiences coming across the applications like Excel and PowerPoint, which traditionally you've not been able to, like Asif and I can't go in at the same time and be editing things. And as Microsoft has been adding that capability, we've been seeing a lot of the tracking, the history, added across these multiple workloads, which is really great to see.
Absolutely, it really is. And then obviously one of the big competitors of Microsoft, which I'll say openly over here, Google. Obviously they've been doing browser-based apps all the time. So Microsoft has to keep in parity with that, with the competition in this case. Yes, so the co-authoring is definitely a big, huge piece of it, but there's so much more as well, where this is going to become a much, much more richer environment as time goes by. So folks who are going now to the E1 version, for example, or others who are actually using the hybrid environment where they sometimes go to the desktop app, which is right here. You can always go switch back and forth to a desktop app or come back to online when it's easier, when they don't have the actual desktop deployed. They're finding it to be much easier, from what I've seen at least, than it used to be, to go back and forth. All right, coming back over here. So that was about Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Now the question comes in, and I've heard this many times, is what about this Sway application? Do we really need Sway? Should we be using Sway? What about PowerPoint? PowerPoint's there, so what's the difference? And this is what Contoso went through as well. They looked at the pros and cons. The pros in their case, quick to create presentations, easy to share with others with Sway. And it's also like a quick web page, which I'll show you a pre-built Sway application. You'll see it. it looks like a web page, and it's a presentation, and it's just simple and it's easy to share. Now the cons on the flip side is it's another application to learn. And PowerPoint is still pretty awesome, right? PowerPoint is still there and it's improving. There's the introduction of design ideas, which happened about, I believe, a year and a half or something ago, which was awesome. So then the question becomes, should I be using Sway? And before I answer that question for what Contoso decided, let me show you. This is a Sway, or this is just some sample Sways. If I'll just go ahead and click on one, this is what it looks like. So kind of like a web page, and it's presentation style. But look at how interactive it is. So it says tap to flip through this stack. Click on this. Here we go. And that's just one of the many cool features like that that's there. But it does feel and look to me like a web page. So then people wonder, do I really need a web page type of presentation model? I've seen definitely some folks using Sway, but not as much as I had thought that was going to happen when it first came out. In terms of Contoso, they chose to not use Sway because small organization, they already were really adept to using PowerPoint and they had no pain point. You know, that's one of the big things. That what is your pain point? If you have a pain point, if there is some specific use for it, then you want to change, but you don't want to change for the sake of change, in my opinion. So in this case, they chose not to use Sway. Not saying Sway is a bad application, don't get me wrong. It's just that you want to use the stuff that's needed. Next things, users need to manage their own business documents. Now you know exactly which slide is coming up next. OneDrive. OneDrive, wonderful application. Individual business documents management. You go ahead and you start your document journey in OneDrive, whether it's within File Explorer where you have OneDrive mapped, or you go directly to OneDrive and you click on the new button over here. Oops, I went too quickly. Go back over here. Yeah, so if you go over here, click on new and choose Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever it is, and then you go from there, right? And then of course you can share from OneDrive as well, share and get feedback from people. Say, hey, Tim, can you take a look at that and do some sharing? As soon as you're ready though to share with a bigger group of people and make it a shared document, then the best step, in my opinion, after that is to put into a document library. You can do it directly through SharePoint document library, or now if you're using Teams, you can go directly into the appropriate team, put it there, and automatically gets shared with the team within the document library that's underlying, that's behind the team, okay? Having said that, so this is all obviously just talking rah-rah about OneDrive, and OneDrive is great, and it is. However, what if people are pretty comfortable using with a competitor, using a competitor product like Dropbox? What's in it for them to move to OneDrive? Now, I was in that camp actually. I used to be a Dropbox user for a long time, and I had the same challenge. Why should I go to OneDrive? And honestly, I think this is a good challenge for us ourselves to think about first before we try to push it to anybody else as to why I should do a certain change. Why should I make a change? So if you have this challenge of how do you get users switch to OneDrive, I have a few pointers for you. First, you have to empathize with the users. Sorry, this D should not be there at the end. Empathize with the users. Admin, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I know why this D was there. The way I've made this thing is like a scenario of exactly what happened at Contoso. So what the person did was empathize with the users. The admin himself became a Dropbox user. Oh, I'm sorry, herself became a Dropbox user. Made a list of pros and cons of why employees should switch from Dropbox to OneDrive. These kind of things usually don't happen, but I've seen this actually happen. That's the reason this is from an actual case scenario, an actual case study. Not Contoso, obviously, but it's a different one that I cannot name. And lastly, demonstrated the pros of switching in the company town hall meeting as to why we should switch from Dropbox to OneDrive, demonstrating it, showing it exactly what comes out of it. And here's some examples, some things to take note of. For example, native support for automatically saving documents in OneDrive. So when you go to PowerPoint or you go to Word, Excel, and it's sitting inside OneDrive, it's automatically actually saving those documents. You don't have to click on that save button repeatedly. It's just doing it. And it does that for OneDrive, it doesn't do it for Dropbox. It's easier to share documents with colleagues using OneDrive, especially if you are an Office 365 environment. So now you don't have to go from a different environment like Dropbox or Box or something like that and share your documents. It's just right there. So within it's native, easy to do that with your colleagues. The security is the same, right? Underlying security. And also easily promoting documents from OneDrive to SharePoint document library to share with others. Think about these 3 points, and I'm sure you have more in mind too. If you do, I would love to hear it, by the way. Use my email address and send it to me, because I would love to understand more scenarios out there. But these 3 things and more like it, you have to understand for yourself first, help your users understand instead of just pushing them into a direction, in my humble opinion. They need to understand what's in it for them before they'll make the change. So that's what Contoso did. That's the OneDrive journey. Next requirement they had was they needed a workspace for the teams to collaborate. So you got the individual stuff that they're doing in OneDrive and making Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that kind of stuff. But what about a group workspace where we can go and do our task management and chat and online meetings and team calendars, easy note-taking, stuff like that. Obviously, you know what the next thing that's coming, right? It's Office 365 groups. Now, the groups capability within Office 365, I believe, is wonderful because it gives you an underlying layer, like a private space where you can collaborate with a group. Group could be 2 people, it could be 2,000 people, it could be even more, right? But within that group, you're doing all these different, using all these different services like SharePoint and Stream and Calendar and Team and stuff like that. And you're doing it in an environment which is very specific to the group's needs. Now, the group could be long-term or it could be short-term. So a group could be sales, marketing, IT, stuff like that. Or the group could be for a very specific project, okay? And it could be short-term. So don't be afraid to make groups because you can always make them and you can delete them or archive them later if needed to. Fellow colleague and fellow MVP that I'm sure Christian knows really well as well, Matt Wade, actually made this. And I use this, obviously giving credit to the Jump to 365 organization who actually produced it on Matt's behalf, or put it out there on Matt's behalf over here. This is a really nice infographic showing how you can make Office 365 groups from different applications. And depending on where you make it from, what underlying services get provisioned. And I'll quickly talk about this thing in a couple minutes over here. Let's say if you just wanted these services right here, right? For that, which is Notebook, SharePoint, Planner, Outlook, Power BI, Workspace, stuff like that, you need to go to any of these places like Stream, SharePoint, Planner, Mail, and just make a group. Once you make a group, you get these services. Okay. If you do that from Yammer, as you can see, if you make a new group from Yammer, you get all these green services here. What you do not get, as you would suspect, is the Outlook email inbox, Teams wiki, Teams chat, that kind of stuff over here. If you make the group in Team, within Team, you get mostly everything except Yammer. All right, so this is where it goes back to we were talking about earlier, the Teams versus Yammer discussion, because it does kind of look like there's 2 different camps. There's a Team camp and then there's a Yammer camp and 2 different sides. So I will talk about that. I will refer to this again as well, but it's good to understand at the technical level here what different services get provisioned when you are making a group from each of these different places, okay? In the specific example of Contoso, they chose Microsoft Teams as the main place where they made the new groups. So you make a new team in Microsoft Teams and the whole group gets created everywhere. They chose to start provisioning it through there to keep things consistent. So everything started becoming a team. All right. Now, having said that, let me also give you a caveat. I know of a corporation, actually I shouldn't even call it a corporation, it's a small organization of 130 people. There was no good governance, unfortunately, around Teams, and they ended up with 135 teams, which not a really good scenario, in my opinion, to manage all that stuff. So you want to be careful when you're doing this stuff that not everybody goes out and starts creating teams. Okay. Speaking of teams, there's a lot you can do. It's a chat-based workspace. It's organized by teams, pun intended in this case, within the company. The channels exist within each team to discuss different topics. You have video chat capability, private channels were introduced recently also. You have connectors to connect to other services. You can send email directly to a channel within a team. A lot of good stuff like that you could do directly in there. Okay. All right. And this is actually a quick animated image showing you what a team looks like. And I'll try to take you to the actual environment also where Teams is running. But right now, here we go. There was teams, and this is channels within a team. And then you got members within each team. Once you join a team, you get into the workspace, you can start going ahead and making posts within the workspace to correspond to collaborate with your team members, sharing files and whatever else you want to do. So once, as I said before, you make a team here, you get the whole underlying services like Planner and SharePoint and everything else that comes with it, and you can go easily and use this plus sign to make different tabs to be able to go to those services directly from the same interface. I'm sure all of you have been hearing Microsoft talk a lot about Teams these days. That's been going on for quite some time, and it will remain like that for a long time, and there's a good reason for it. Teams is sort of becoming your Outlook, kind of, right? Where you're having most of your work done within Teams. You go open up Teams and it remains open all day long. You collaborate with people, you look at different resources, you manage and share those resources, and consume a lot of this other services directly within Teams as well. So there's going to be a lot more team scenarios with the whole Teams apps from third parties also becoming a big deal pretty soon. That's going to be coming up. So all collaboration processes taking place within groups when you do it like that. If you're a salesperson, you go into the sales team, or I'm sorry, sales team, and then you can just stay there and collaborate and work with your folks right there. If you're marketing, same thing, you go to the marketing team. Awesome thing about this whole groups business is that you can actually get to it from Outlook as well, right? So when you're in Outlook, on the left right there, you can see that the groups are right there. Once again, this is a fact that most of us stay in Outlook throughout our day, and now this is becoming more like that for Teams as well. But when you're in Outlook, you can easily go to the actual group, and from there you can consume other services from directly here, and just makes it easier for user adoption to go from where you already are, where you're already familiar with, to other things that you need to get familiar with. All right, also group calendars too. That's also really cool where, let's say if I'm part of sales, but I'm also part of marketing because it's a small company, and I'm part of some other team, it will show you a calendar overlay for all the different groups in this case, just directly from group calendars. Okay. Let me show you a couple of these things over here if I can. So I'll go here, and this is what I was talking about before. So there's so much stuff going on here. It's hard for a user when they're looking at all different apps to know exactly what they should be looking at. If I right click and open a new tab, Team should open up. Now, obviously, there's a fat client version, the desktop version of Team, which is this was it tells me like that all the time in the top. Here we go. Download now, and I already have Teams going, but I have my own company stuff, so I won't be able to show that currently. But within the browser version of Teams, which looks very similar to the desktop version of it, this is what it is, right? You got the Teams here, and you got channels underneath it. Okay, this is where you collaborate. You go into the actual channel, you collaborate in the posts, you share your files right there. If I put a file within here, it's going to come up in a second, it will go to the underlying document library, the SharePoint document library of this team. And it says right there that you can go to the underlying document library by opening up SharePoint. Let's see what that does. Here we go. It takes me to the sales and marketing document library if I did that. I remember a person telling me before that, hey, we're actually getting away from SharePoint altogether. We're going to go completely Teams. We're not doing anything with SharePoint anymore. And I had to chuckle to myself thinking that, well, you know, Teams is built on top of SharePoint. You cannot really get rid of SharePoint. Yes, you can have your new interface and you can interact on top of Teams, but still underlying services provided is by SharePoint. So please keep that in mind. That's exactly what's going on in the back end here.
It's the old Palmolive ad. You're already soaking in it.
I don't remember that specific ad, but yes, that analogy makes sense. Shows your age, Christian. Just kidding.
I know. Yeah.
All right. Need to create quick anonymous forms for external surveys. That's the second thing. By the way, I'm going to come back to Teams and Yammer and all that stuff, so don't get disappointed just yet. I will be talking about that controversial topic. But before that, let's talk about some additional things here, like anonymous forms being a requirement for this company. What do? We need to have anonymous forms, external surveys and stuff like that. What application should we use for that particular case scenario? There's an application called Microsoft Forms for that. Very easy to use. Those of you who are not coming from a super technical background, this is the best application for form creation. It is simple, very, very simple. You go to new form, you go to new quiz, and you start making your form. It gives you a very nice, easy to use interface, and you make your form. Yeah. In fact, I'll quickly show you over here that if I go to apps over here, here's forms, right click, open new tab. And that's what it looks like. Okay, splash screen came up. You can make new choices. I'm sorry, new questions in this case. And I go from there. Very easy to do, not much complex. Having said that, if you do need some more complex functionality, Microsoft Forms is not the app for you. That's where Power Apps comes in. Okay. And I'll be talking about Power Apps pretty soon as well. But keep in mind that for easy, quick forms, especially anonymous forms also in surveys or quizzes, things like that, Forms works wonderful. And that's what Contoso ended up using as well in this case. All right. Now, the next thing. So we're talking about consulting team here, right? Contoso being consulting team, they needed a way to have easy tracking of one-on-one consulting engagements. All right, so how do you do that? And I actually threw up a picture of our own consulting that we offer as well over here when I'm in consulting. So when you do this, when you have hourly consulting, how do you manage something like that from applications within Office 365? What they decided was using SharePoint lists as their back end, using Power Apps as their front end, so that's the main form, and then using Power Automate to have everything flowing back and forth as needed. Okay, SharePoint list, Power Automate, and Power Apps. Power Automate, for those of you who are unaware, is Flow. It's the new name for Flow. I guess it's not that new anymore. It's been a few months already. But going inside of it, here's what this all entails. Consulting services tracking built of SharePoint list, which is where you hold your clients, you have your hours billed and everything else like that in the back end list. Power Apps being your front end, which serves the customized forms and views that you can see on your phone, on your tablet, on your PC, Mac, whatever. And then Power Automate for the approval process that happens in the back end. I'll show you a few of these things. I won't be able to show you everything. So first, consulting SharePoint lists. So this is what it would look like, right? They have the consulting lists like customers, went too quickly, sorry. Customers, purchases, sessions, user info, that kind of stuff is all directly within SharePoint, all the data. This is what a Power App looks like for them in this particular case. All right, so this view changes depending on if you're on your phone or if you're on your desktop or laptop. Very nice, easy, clean view to make this happen. But as I was saying before, that to create forms and Power Apps is definitely more technical in nature. Those of you who are coming from the InfoPath days, you will find it, because I also come from the InfoPath days, that there are things in Power Apps which are more technical than InfoPath used to be. Okay, definitely extremely powerful, but there is a learning curve involved. So if you're coming from InfoPath into Power Apps. All right, and then the third thing over here, Power Automate, that's Flow. The whole premise behind Power Automate, if you know of services out there like IFTTT and Zapier, it's the same thing where you're taking services from different places and you're kind of tying them together based on different events. They could be time-based events, they could be actual trigger events, or it could be even manual. Something happens here, do something there, basically, right? So that's what this application, which actually I think I have it opened up in a different browser here, I'll show you. Here we go. Here's the actual working application, obviously with demo data over here. So you have clients over there, you click on add a purchase, a flow gets kicked off in the back end also, things are happening, put information in there, click on submit, which I won't do right now, but that all that data goes into SharePoint list. So it could look beautiful like this one, I'm sure a lot more beautiful than this also, and be very, very functional. An easy way for you to make applications using Power Automate, Power Apps, and SharePoint List. And that's what Contoso ended up doing with their need. And I showed this specifically, the harmony between these three applications, because people wonder how does it all come together. So it's an actual way of how things come together in this case. Obviously, this is not a Power Apps session, nor a Power Automate session. Otherwise, I would go much, much deeper. But we have to continue moving in this case. So what about Yammer? All right. So the question is finally here. With the stuff that I've already seen, Asif, with Microsoft Teams, do you even need Yammer? What's the point? And that why is super important, by the way. You got to ask that question. Why do I need it? This is what Yammer looks like. Here's a quick animated view of Yammer. You got your networks, you have your groups inside there, and when you click on a group, you can see all the conversations. You can like conversations like here, you can reply, and all that good stuff, right? Looks very similar. Looks very similar to what Teams looks like. So before we answer the main question, let's talk about Yammer a little bit. Enterprise social. Okay, usually more than 500 people is what you usually see being used. Discovering connections and people you don't know through the organization. Remember the word enterprise in this case. And Yammer conversations feel very much like forum conversations, threaded. Many companies, large specifically, are using Yammers successfully and loving it. And it definitely has an overlap with Teams. Don't believe anyone who says otherwise. It does, for sure. So then, Teams versus Yammer, what's the difference? We're here finally. Let's talk about this a little bit. So think about the history of Teams. It was built by Microsoft. Back end of Teams is SharePoint, as I talked about. It's a chat-based workspace. And you're working together with those you already know, one-to-one, one-to-few communication that's happening. And also another thing that we all need to remember is that there are limitations on the size of a team. So you can have up to 5,000 members in there, okay? But no more as of March 2020, which is right now. So keep all the stuff in mind as we talk about Yammer, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons for doing each. Yammer, purchased by Microsoft in 2014. So Yammer was not built by Microsoft. It was purchased as a company and incorporated then later, much later actually, within Office 365. So it is broad discussion groups crossing team boundaries. You're not necessarily talking to only your team. You're talking to the enterprise many times, and you're crossing boundaries, going from team to team to team. So having said that, obviously, it is very much enterprise communication and social networking that's happening here. You're reaching out to people of similar interests or similar skill sets, and you're reaching out and discovering them and then communicating with them. So it is a many-to-many communication that's happening over here. And like I said, discovering those you don't know, okay? These are the main differences. Obviously, there's a whole lot more obvious also, but within Yammer and Teams, that's the main difference. Microsoft uses the analogy of the outer loop being Yammer and the inner loop, the core being Teams, which makes a lot of sense. You can be in team all day long, working within the Teams application, working with your team members. But then when you want to talk to someone outside of your immediate network, you could go to Yammer and talk to someone else over there as well. Okay. So then the question becomes Teams or Yammer, when to use what? What I'm going to say right now, obviously, is my humble opinion, so take it for what it's worth. Small teams, 10 to 500 people, you don't really need Yammer. You can use Teams only. You're working with people that you know. There's not much discovery that happens within that size of a team, of a company. So Contoso, in this case, for example, went just with Teams because it's 150 people. Yammer, on the other hand, you can have much, much, much bigger teams, right? Medium to large teams. Now, if you have more than 500 people, there's no reason you can't use Teams and Yammer, right? As I mentioned before, that in the course of your day, you're going to be working with people that you know, but you'll also need to reach out with people you don't know. You won't find them in your team, and you probably won't have access to the other team that they belong to. So how do you get in touch with them? You discover people by having Yammer and going to that outer loop for discovery, for engagement. Another really cool scenario that I've seen is executives can get a really good feel for what's going on in their company, the pulse of their company, by going to different groups within Yammer and seeing, all right, what kind of conversations are happening, and maybe even engaging with people directly, because now we're talking about the whole enterprise community, enterprise social. So Yammer works really well for big companies like that. Having said that, please, I would highly suggest to avoid any redundancy. Use both only if there's a good business case for it. Otherwise, don't use both, in my opinion. Because if you do start using it and you call it the same, use the same terminology, for example, talking to people saying, hey, yeah, I put it into the Yammer IT group, or what if you just said that I put it into the IT group? What about that? How will they know if it's Teams or Yammer or something else altogether? You know, that kind of stuff, the vagueness of the whole thing becomes very difficult for people to deal with, and then the adoption suffers. So you want to be careful, and you want to try to make things simple. Speaking of simple, next topic, they need a simple task management tool for their team. Contoso does. As I mentioned before, they don't have licensing for Project Server or Project Online, or the new Project Online. There's actually two different versions of Project Online. So what do? Right? Team task management can take place in an application called Planner. We use Planner all the time within our company, Visual SP as well. It's a pretty awesome application. It's lightweight, but it lets you do in a Kanban kind of approach a lot of good, easy task management. If you want to run your sprints, have your Scrum, for example, that you could do also really easily over here. And what it's showing you is these are all different plans. Then this is the progress for each plan. When you go into a plan, these are different boards. These are different buckets to do project management. You can have more buckets, and you can move things here and there easily as well within those buckets. So Planner Hub, which is the main right here, Planner Hub, you can see all your boards over there. And it's the whole thing is the Kanban approach to working on tasks. If you're familiar with other applications out there like Trello or Asana, things like that, it's a very similar approach here in Planner, and it's all included within Office 365. So why not use it? Yeah. All right. Moving on forward. Next thing to talk about is if you need a place to store your videos, video demos and meetings like Contoso did in this case. They were doing lots of video demos when they would go out and look for business. They would talk about all the different products that they offered and what kind of consulting they did. They need to record everything. So what's the best way to do that? Well, they're already holding their meetings in Team, and Teams has a great integration with Stream. In fact, when you record a meeting in Teams, automatically the recording goes into Stream, which is wonderful. Not just that, but you also get auto transcription, face detection, search and discovery. Everything just pops up automatically. Okay, so give you a quick perspective here. If I go back, here's Stream. If I go to Discover Videos, it's going to show me all different videos out here. And I'll pick one, for example, why 3D printers. And within here, here's a quick transcript. Let me pause this over here. If I go to People, it shows me all the different 3D people in this case that are in this video. Actually, this is the same guy, I think. Detection kind of messed up over here. But if I wanted to see this person, all right, let's see where this person appears. Here we go. This, I believe, is this guy right here. Really cool people detection, transcripts, more trending videos. You can even incorporate forms directly into Stream as well for Microsoft Forms. So a lot of good stuff you could do in Stream. Okay. All right. So that's the video strategy within organization. There's a lot of stuff going on, obviously, within Office 365. Then the question becomes, are people going to get confused? Is there just too much content, right? Yes, there is a lot of content. There's a lot of apps that's going to be there in Office 365. So there's one app within the whole category of the mix of these apps, which helps a lot with context. I believe personally very much in context. Context is actually important, more important in my opinion than content. Sometimes the overwhelming nature of having too much content drives the adoption in the negative direction, which you don't want. Something that helps with context is an application called Delve. The Delve is an app that you'll find where you go there, automatically it pushes all the data to you that's relevant to you without you doing anything else. You just go there and you consume that information, which I'll show you a screenshot pretty soon. In fact, it's an animated screenshot that's coming up. That's another thing that appears in as a view in other applications like OneDrive called a discovery view. So you go to OneDrive, you go to Discovery, which is already a pre-built view, and it shows you the things that you should know. For example, other documents that are relevant to you. Okay, automatically pushes that information to you. So both of those things and some more stuff like that within Office 365 really helps with context. Here's a quick view of what Delve looks like. Okay. Go to Delve, and in this case, for example, it's showing me all the different documents or other kind of artifacts that are important to me. These could be from people who report to me or the people that I report to, and they are, of course, they're shared with me. So I won't see anything here that is not shared with me, that I don't have privilege or security to view. So Delve is very careful about, respecting those security boundaries. Having said that, please be very careful when opening up Delve. I have heard unfortunate nightmares from people saying, oh, we opened up Delve and everybody just freaked out. Why am I seeing all this content? What's going on over here? And then they had to shut it down. So governance and education, providing context-sensitive help, which I also very much believe in, to people when they first come over here and like a splash screen or something like that, to let them know what they're looking at, why they're seeing it, is super important. You want to help people, train people before you let them loose on any of these kind of applications. Okay. Then employees. Yeah, so this is actually what I was talking about. Employees needed to be educated as to why they were seeing other people's content. That's a super important thing. If you do go the route of using Delve, please don't forget that. Okay. Now, lastly over here, we haven't come to this yet, but visualization of all your data. So if you're a sales organization, or if you're an organization which relies on some specific metrics that you have to visualize either for yourself or for your superiors or others, there is an application within Office 365 called Power BI that you can use to make some wonderful dashboards. Okay, this is a typical dashboard that you'll see in Power BI. I don't have the specific one going, otherwise I would show you this as well. But this is the Office 365 adoption dashboard. If you have licensing for Power BI, you can go ahead and grab the adoption dashboard for free from Microsoft and see exactly what kind of adoption metrics you get from your tenant. So for example, how many emails are being checked overall, and how much emails are being sent. That's for email. In SharePoint, how many people are going to sites and how many people are returning to different sites, things like that. Same thing for Yammer, OneDrive, and all the other kind of applications. And when you click on an application, in this case, for example, SharePoint, it will give you a very deep dive also as to within SharePoint, for example, which ones are enabled versus active users, right? Total versus active sites. There's so much content over here that you'll be able to visualize. And this is all, the actual dashboard is completely free as long as you have licensing for it. But of course, you're not gonna stop there and just talk about adoption. If you have specific metrics, like this one, this shows a sales performance directly within Power BI, okay? You can build these out. You can, I'm sure, get lots of these pre-built dashboards as well that you can hook up to your data, and it will let you visualize everything. A wonderful application, in my opinion, is Power BI. Okay, wow, we went through a lot of stuff over here, and I'm 5 minutes before time, so a quick summary over here. In my opinion, use only what's needed. eliminate redundant systems, and make sure a need exists before using a new process, a new system. Another quick story over here before I end. I knew, well, actually, I've seen a bunch of these companies who actually open up everything, including Teams and Yammer and OneDrive and just everything all at once. And they had to roll back a lot of those things. One company, for example, had hundreds of teams and lots and lots of different groups within Yammer networks and a bunch of different networks, and they had to roll everything back because there was no governance. Nobody knew exactly what was going on and where everything was. It's kind of like back in the SharePoint days where we used to have sites upon sites and site collections and subsites and many different pages, and nobody knew at the time of migration where everything was and if anybody was using it. So you don't want to go that route. You want to be careful. Governance, policy communication, providing contextual help for people so they understand what to do, what not to do is super, super important in my opinion. All right. Having said that, as I mentioned before at the beginning, if you would like the Visual SP application, you can get the Visual SP application. It will help you with the contextual training. Just do a search for Visual SP plugin. You'll find that. Next step, download my presentation. Actually, so this is a deck that I use at conferences as well, so it has a link to that presentation, but I'm sure Christian is going to be sharing the presentation as well. This next thing I was just talking about before, where you can actually get Visual SP for content that we have, which is actually coming from Microsoft. A lot of the free content, you can get that at this link. Don't worry about this thing. I can't give you the SharePoint badge of honor, which I usually pass out at the conferences. I should have actually taken this particular slide out, maybe, because it doesn't apply here. But definitely do reach out to me if you like, asif@visualsp.com. I would love to hear your scenario, and if I could help, I would love to help as well. And I want to thank Christian. I want to thank Extranet User Manager team for having me on this call and this webinar. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us. And I'd also say that if you definitely go and follow Asif on Twitter, just Asif Ramani, and because he's constantly tweeting out links to great content at a steady stream as well. So I believe in that philosophy of sharing, and you do too. So yeah, anyway, we'll have a, for everyone that missed the beginning of this, there's a recording of this will be available by tomorrow. Anyone who registered for the webinar, of course, will get an email with a follow-up, and we'll have a link to Asif's slides as well as the recording, and then the recording, as soon as it's available, will be available on demand, so you can point your friends and family members as well. So all your loved ones, you can point to this training. All right, well, thanks a lot for your time. And see, there was one question. One question was posted. Can we see the People app expand to include SharePoint groups? That would be super useful if you saw that question.
Yeah, I thought we saw that, right?
Did you answer that one in?
I didn't answer it, but I mean, in the People app, we were able to show the groups, right? Right here. Was that the question?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not showing my screen right now. Hang on, here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so in People app, obviously you can see the groups, and you can see all the different groups that you belong to, that you're a member of, that you're owner of, and things like that. And you can easily manage those memberships right here. I think that was a question.
Yep.
Okay.
I think so too. Any other final questions before we drop off? If not, if you have any follow-up questions, again, you've got Asif's email, and reach out to us or to us directly, and happy to answer those. But Asif, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing this, and thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.